Have you ever believed that marriage meant sharing everything, and then one day discovered the person you love was hiding a secret bank account? In this video, I share my real story in the United States about love, cultural differences, silent dinners, and how I slowly improved my English through that painful season to rebuild trust and save my family. A question that hurts. There is a special kind of pain that does not shout. It whispers. It whispers when you are washing dishes in a quiet American kitchen, when the children are asleep, when your phone screen lights up with a bank notification you do not recognize. In that moment, one simple belief begins to crack. Marriage was about sharing, so why did he hide a bank account? I was standing in our home in the United States, staring at numbers that did not belong to any account I knew. The balance was not the problem. The secrecy was. I always believed love meant transparency. We shared rent, groceries, parenting duties, dreams about the future. I used to say in my slow, careful English, we are one team. It was one of the first full sentences I felt confident saying after moving to America. Let's say it together, slowly. We are one team. Clear. Simple. Powerful. When I first arrived in the U.S., everything felt fast. Fast speech. Fast highways. Fast decisions. My English was not fast. I listened carefully to every word people said, like I was catching falling glass. Sometimes I understood. Sometimes I smiled and pretended. Living in a new country already makes your nervous system alert. Psychologists explain that when we are in unfamiliar environments, our brain scans for danger more often. Add limited language skills to that, and the stress doubles. You do not just worry about money or relationships. You worry about understanding the cashier. You worry about signing the right document. You worry about sounding foolish. So when I saw that hidden account, my reaction was not calm or logical. It was survival. My mind immediately created stories. Is he planning to leave? Does he not trust me? Am I just a guest in his life here in America? Notice the language of fear. The brain fills empty space with worst-case scenarios. Neuroscience shows that uncertainty activates the amygdala, the emotional alarm center. When that happens, rational thinking becomes weaker. In simple words, when you feel betrayed, your English becomes worse. That night, I tried to practice my usual listening lesson. I pressed play on a slow English story. The voice said, "Love requires trust." I almost laughed. I replayed the sentence 3 times, but my mind was somewhere else. This is something many English learners do not talk about. Emotional pain reduces concentration. Studies on working memory show that stress limits how much information your brain can process at one time. So if you are struggling to focus on English during a hard season in your life, it is not laziness. It is biology. Instead of forcing myself to memorize vocabulary, I opened my notebook. I wrote one sentence. Why did you hide this from me? I wrote it slowly. I read it aloud. I practiced pronunciation. Why did you hide this from me? When language connects to real emotion, memory becomes stronger. The brain remembers what matters. That sentence mattered. The next morning, the house felt unusually quiet. The coffee machine hummed. Sunlight came through the kitchen window. He was scrolling through his phone, unaware that I had discovered something that changed the air between us. My hands were cold, but my voice needed to be steady. Why did you hide this from me? He looked up. Surprise. Then tension. That small question was not perfect English. It was not poetic. But it was clear. And clarity is more important than complexity. Many learners think they must speak like native speakers to be respected. That is not true. In difficult conversations, simple English is stronger. I feel hurt. I need honesty. Please explain. These are short sentences, but they carry weight. He did not answer immediately. Silence stretched across the table. Silence can feel louder than shouting. In cross-cultural marriages, silence is often misunderstood. In some cultures, silence means thinking. In others, it means guilt. In that moment, my mind chose the darkest interpretation. But here is the lesson I want you to hear carefully. When trust shakes, do not attack first. Breathe first. Inhale for 4 seconds. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. This breathing pattern slows the heart rate and signals safety to the brain. When your body calms down, your pronunciation improves. Your listening improves. Your thinking becomes clearer. English fluency is connected to emotional control more than we realize. He finally said, "It's not what you think." You probably know that sentence. It rarely makes anyone feel safe. Instead of raising my voice, I answered with another simple line. Then help me understand. Notice the structure. Subject. Verb. Object. Clear and direct. This is real English practice. Not from a textbook. From life. At that table, I realized something uncomfortable. I had been focusing so much on learning English from videos that I forgot to use English to protect my own heart. Language is not only for passing exams or getting jobs in the US. It is for expressing boundaries. It is for asking hard questions. Marriage, I believed, was automatic sharing. But maybe sharing is not automatic. Maybe it is a skill, like speaking clearly. You practice. You misunderstand. You adjust. You try again. That morning did not solve everything. It did not magically restore trust. But it created the first honest crack in the silence. And sometimes, breaking silence is the real beginning. Standing there in my American kitchen, with fear and courage fighting inside me, I understood one powerful truth. If I could learn to speak up slowly and clearly, I might not only improve my English, I might save my marriage. Arriving in America. Air in America felt different the first week I arrived. Not because oxygen changes across borders, but because fear changes how you breathe. I landed in the United States with one suitcase, one husband, and English that worked, but only on good days. At the airport, announcements sounded like one long word. I caught maybe every fifth syllable. Welcome to something. Baggage claim, maybe. I smiled like I understood everything. Inside, my brain was running a marathon. Climate was my first shock. Winter bit harder than I expected. The cold in our state was dry and sharp, not soft like the rain back home. I learned a new word, wind chill. It sounded small. It felt brutal. I repeated it slowly to remember. Wind. Chill. Two simple words. Together, they meant your face hurts. Culture was the second shock. In America, neighbors wave but do not always visit. People say, let's get coffee sometime, and sometimes it is polite, not a plan. At the grocery store, strangers say, how are you, and keep walking before you answer. I practiced the correct response, good, thanks. How about you? Fast. Automatic. Social English is like choreography. If you miss one step, you feel exposed. Policy and paperwork were the third shock. Forms. Insurance. Taxes. In the U.S., systems are clear but detailed. One wrong box checked can create weeks of confusion. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, reading a health insurance document, translating each sentence in my head. Deductible. Premium. Coverage. Out-of-pocket maximum. My eyes moved. My understanding moved slower. Here is something important for you as an English learner. Cognitive load increases when you process new vocabulary in high-stakes situations. Research in cognitive psychology shows that working memory has limited capacity. When you use it to decode language, you have less space left for decision-making. That is why simple tasks feel overwhelming in a new country. It is not weakness. It is bandwidth. In those early months, I felt small. My husband handled phone calls. He spoke confidently with bank representatives, landlords, utility companies. I listened beside him, catching fragments. Sometimes he summarized for me. Sometimes he forgot. I told myself it was practical. Efficient. But a quiet voice inside whispered, "You are not equal here." Equality in marriage is not only about love. It is about access. Access to information. Access to money. Access to conversations. I began a routine. Every morning, I listened to slow English for 15 minutes. Not dramatic speeches. Not advanced vocabulary. Just clear storytelling. I repeated sentences aloud while washing dishes. I would like to ask a question. Could you please explain that again? I need more time to understand. Short sentences. Survival tools. Pronunciation improved when I exaggerated slightly. Linguists explain that muscle memory develops through repetition. Your tongue is a muscle. Your mouth is a system. When you speak slowly and clearly, you train coordination. So I trained in the kitchen. My audience was the refrigerator and the sink. Meanwhile, I observed American family life. Independence is valued here. Teenagers get part-time jobs. Couples sometimes keep separate credit histories. Friends talk openly about investments. Money conversations are not always emotional, they are practical. At least on the surface. That cultural detail matters later. Back then, though, I was simply trying to belong. I joined a small community class for English learners. Different accents filled the room. We all carried invisible stories. One woman from Brazil said she felt mute at parent-teacher meetings. A man from Korea admitted he avoided social gatherings because jokes moved too fast. Hearing them made me breathe easier. I was not alone. Belonging reduces stress. And when stress decreases, language acquisition improves. Studies show that positive emotional states enhance neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections. In simple terms, when you feel safe, you learn faster. At home, our marriage looked stable. We cooked together. We planned for children. We talked about buying a house someday. I believed transparency was natural. I assumed shared goals meant shared accounts, shared decisions, shared futures. But assumptions are quiet. They grow unnoticed. One evening, I asked him, slowly, should we open a joint savings account? He nodded and said, yes, of course. I felt reassured. Teamwork. Partnership. American dream, but together. Looking back, I see something clearly. When you depend on someone for language, you also depend on them for power. It is subtle. You may not notice it at first. But when one partner understands the system better, imbalance can form without intention. That does not mean my husband was evil. It means context shapes behavior. If you are learning English in a new country, here is a practical suggestion. Do not avoid official conversations. Even if your voice shakes, participate. Ask one question. Read one paragraph yourself. Call once, even if you rehearse the script before dialing. Each action builds autonomy. Autonomy builds confidence. Confidence changes relationships. In those early American months, I was building vocabulary. I did not realize I was also building courage. And courage would soon be tested, not by immigration forms or winter wind chill, but by a discovery that forced me to ask whether sharing was truly mutual, or just something I wanted to believe. Love in simple English. Love did not begin with perfect grammar. It began with pauses. When we first dated in the United States, our conversations were slow, almost careful. I searched for words. He waited. Sometimes he corrected me gently. Sometimes he did not. I remember one evening in early spring. The air was still cold, but the sky was clear. We were walking in a small neighborhood park, and I wanted to say something romantic. Instead of a long speech, I said, "I feel safe with you." Simple sentence. Present tense. Clear subject. Clear emotion. He smiled like I had written poetry. That was the moment I realized something important about language and love. Complexity is impressive. Clarity is intimate. In the beginning, our relationship felt like a shared language class. I would try new phrases. He would laugh kindly when I mixed up tenses. Once I said, "I am boring," when I meant, "I am bored." He laughed and said, "No, you are not boring." We both laughed. Mistakes became memories. Research in relationship psychology shows that couples who respond positively to small communication attempts build stronger emotional bonds. Dr. John Gottman calls these bids for connection. When you say something small, even in imperfect English, and your partner responds with warmth, trust grows. In those early days, he responded with warmth. We built our love in short sentences. I miss you. Drive safely. Call me when you arrive. I am proud of you. If you are practicing English right now, repeat these lines. They are simple, but they are used every day in American life. Real English. Emotional English. When we married, I truly believed our simplicity was strength. We did not argue loudly. We discussed. We planned. We saved money carefully. At least, I thought we did. There is something beautiful about building a life in a new country together. Grocery shopping feels like teamwork. Signing a lease feels like achievement. Even assembling furniture becomes symbolic. We once spent 3 hours building a bookshelf from a flat box. The instructions were confusing. The screws were tiny. At one point, we both sat on the floor, tired and silent. Then he said, "We can figure this out." That sentence became our motto. Looking back, I see how much identity I attached to being a good wife in America. I cooked new recipes. I learned about tax returns. I practiced small talk with neighbors. I wanted to prove I could belong, not only to this country, but to this marriage. Psychologists describe something called attachment security. When you feel secure, you assume your partner has good intentions. You interpret unclear behavior in a positive way. That was me. If he came home late, I assumed traffic. If he seemed distracted, I assumed work stress. My brain chose trust automatically. And trust, when strong, is quiet. At night, after dinner, I would practice English by reading short stories aloud. He sometimes listened while scrolling on his phone. I asked, "Does my pronunciation sound okay?" He would say, "Yes, it's good." I believed him. But here is a subtle detail. Belief is different from verification. In American culture, financial independence is often considered responsible. Many people maintain personal savings even after marriage. It is not always a sign of betrayal. It can be habit. It can be fear. It can be preparation for uncertainty. I did not fully understand this cultural layer at first. In my mind, shared life meant shared accounts. One evening, while paying bills online, I asked casually, "How much do we have in savings now?" He answered quickly, gave a number, and changed the topic. I did not question it. Why would I? We were one team. But love in simple English can hide complicated realities. If you are learning English through stories, pay attention to tone. Words are only part of meaning. Voice hesitation, eye contact, body posture, these are also language. Communication research shows that nonverbal cues carry a large portion of emotional information. At that time, I heard his words. I did not analyze his pauses. There is a reason many people lose motivation to learn English during relationship stress. Emotional conflict consumes cognitive resources. You replay conversations in your head instead of reviewing vocabulary. You analyze facial expressions instead of grammar structures. Love becomes your main subject. And yet, love also gave me motivation. I wanted to understand everything he said. I wanted no misunderstanding between us because of language. So I listened more carefully. I asked for clarification more often. What do you mean? Can you explain? I don't understand. These are powerful sentences. Practice them. Our love story, at that stage, still felt warm. We talked about children. About buying a house. About growing old in America. I imagined gray hair and shared retirement plans. I imagined sitting on a porch, speaking English fluently, laughing about our early mistakes. I did not imagine a hidden account. But the foundation of our marriage, built on simple sentences and good intentions, was about to face its first real test. And sometimes, the strongest love is not proven in romantic moments. It is proven when uncomfortable questions enter the room. Marriage means sharing. Marriage, in my mind, was never just a legal contract in the United States. It was a daily agreement. A quiet promise repeated in small actions. Sharing breakfast. Sharing bills. Sharing passwords. Sharing fears at 2 a.m. when the future feels uncertain. I grew up believing that when two people marry, their lives blend like two rivers meeting. You no longer measure mine and yours. You say ours. Our home. Our savings. Our plans. In my slow, careful English, I loved that word. Ours. It sounds soft. But it carries weight. When we signed our marriage certificate in America, I remember thinking, this is partnership. In U.S. culture, marriage also means legal protection, tax benefits, shared responsibility. It is practical and emotional at the same time. I respected that balance. Love, but also structure. In the first year, we opened a joint checking account. I felt proud when I received my debit card with both our names connected to the same account. It symbolized unity. I practiced saying, we have a joint account. The word joint felt official, adult, stable. Research in relationship psychology shows that couples who perceive fairness in financial decisions report higher relationship satisfaction. It is not about the amount of money. It is about transparency and shared control. Transparency builds trust. Trust builds security. Security builds intimacy. At least, that is the theory. In practice, life is more complicated. As my English improved, I began handling small tasks on my own. Calling the electricity company. Scheduling doctor appointments. Asking questions at the bank. Each successful interaction increased my confidence. Language became less of a barrier. My voice became steadier. Confidence changes posture. It also changes expectations. I started asking more detailed questions about our finances. Not because I suspected anything. Because I wanted to understand. In America, credit scores matter. Savings matter. Retirement accounts matter. The system rewards planning. I wanted to be an equal participant. One evening, I said, slowly but clearly, can we review our savings together this weekend? It was a simple request. Calm tone. Neutral face. He hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. Then he said, sure, we can. That hesitation was small. But small signals often carry large meaning. Communication experts explain that micro-expressions, brief facial movements, can reveal hidden emotions. At that time, I noticed it, but I did not interpret it deeply. My attachment was still secure. My default assumption was trust. Sharing also means vulnerability. I shared my fear of not speaking perfect English. I shared my insecurity about raising children in a culture different from my own. I shared my dreams of starting a small business someday. When I spoke, I felt exposed but connected. I assumed he shared everything too. But here is a difficult truth. Sometimes people share emotions more easily than money. Money represents control, safety, power. In a country like the United States, where individual success is emphasized, financial independence is often linked to personal identity. I did not grow up with that mindset. In my family, money was collective. Decisions were discussed at the table. No secrets. So when I entered marriage, I carried that model with me. Cultural differences in financial attitudes are well documented. Studies show that couples from different cultural backgrounds often disagree about saving, spending, and financial transparency. These differences are not moral failures. They are learned patterns. Still, learned patterns can hurt. I remember one afternoon when I logged into our joint account to pay a bill. The balance seemed lower than expected. I told myself it was probably a transfer. A normal adjustment. I did not panic. I did not accuse. Instead, I practiced a sentence out loud before asking him later. I noticed something different in the account. Notice the structure. Not you did something wrong. Not why are you hiding money. Just an observation. When you use neutral language, conversations are less defensive. This is true in English and in marriage. But before I could ask calmly, the truth revealed itself in a way I did not expect. An email notification appeared. A bank name I did not recognize. My heart beat faster. I clicked. There it was. A separate account. Different balance. Different history. His name alone. In that moment, the word ours felt fragile. Psychologically, betrayal is not only about the action. It is about the violation of expectation. I expected full sharing. The existence of a hidden account contradicted that belief. Cognitive dissonance happens when reality conflicts with our internal story. The brain struggles to reconcile the two. Was my marriage honest? Or was I naive? I sat in silence, staring at the screen. My English vocabulary was suddenly useless. Advanced words did not matter. Only one simple sentence formed in my mind. Why? Marriage means sharing. That was my rule. My definition. My comfort. But definitions are personal. And I was about to learn that his definition of security was not identical to mine. And when two definitions collide, silence can either grow deeper or finally break. The hidden account. The moment you discover a secret, time slows down. The email was still open on the screen. The bank logo looked ordinary. Professional. Harmless. But my chest felt tight. I clicked again, just to be sure. Transaction history. Deposits. Transfers. Dates going back months. Not one day. Not one mistake. Months. My first reaction was not anger. It was disbelief. Maybe this is old. Maybe this is automatic. Maybe I misunderstood. When trust is strong, your brain protects the relationship first. It searches for innocent explanations. But the evidence was clear. A separate account. under his name. Not mentioned once. Psychologists describe betrayal trauma as a rupture in perceived safety. It does not matter whether the issue is money, emotional secrecy, or something else. The core wound is the same. I thought we were aligned. My breathing became shallow. My mind started racing. Was he planning something? Was he preparing to leave? Did he not trust me? Notice how quickly fear creates extreme stories. This is called catastrophizing, a cognitive distortion where the brain jumps to the worst possible outcome. Under stress, the amygdala activates, and logical reasoning decreases. In simple words, emotion becomes louder than facts. At that moment, my English practice felt meaningless. I could pronounce entrepreneurship but could not process why is this happening. Instead of confronting him immediately, I sat down. I forced myself to slow my breathing. Inhale. 4 seconds. Hold. Exhale. 4 seconds. I repeated this cycle 5 times. Physiologically, slow breathing stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. It lowers heart rate. It reduces panic. Calm body, clearer language. Then I opened my notebook again. When did you open this account? Why didn't you tell me? Are you unhappy with me? Short questions. Direct. Honest. This is an important lesson for you as an English learner. In emotional conversations, complexity creates confusion. Simplicity creates clarity. Strong communication is not about impressive vocabulary. It is about precise intention. That evening, he came home as usual. He kissed the children. He asked about dinner. He looked normal. That normality hurt more than anything. How could everything look the same when something felt broken? At the table, I did not accuse. I did not show the email immediately. I said quietly, "Can we talk later tonight?" He nodded. Sure. After the children went to bed, we sat on the couch. The room was dim. The television was off. Silence again, but heavier this time. I showed him the email. His face changed. Not rage. Not guilt exactly. More like exposure. As if a curtain had been pulled back. I was going to tell you, he said. That sentence is common in conflict. It suggests intention without action. It tries to reduce damage. But intention does not erase secrecy. My voice trembled, but I kept it steady enough. When? He did not answer immediately. Here is something important about cultural context in the United States. Many Americans are raised with the idea that financial independence equals security. Even within marriage. Some believe having personal savings is responsible. A backup plan. Not necessarily betrayal. But responsibility without transparency becomes secrecy. He finally said, I just wanted some security. In case something happens. In case what happens? I asked. He hesitated again. In case we struggle. In case things change. There it was. Fear. Not of me exactly, but of uncertainty. Economic downturns. Job loss. Divorce rates in America are often discussed publicly. Financial advisors sometimes even recommend individual emergency funds. His decision, in his mind, might have been practical. But he forgot one thing. Security built alone can feel like rejection to the other person. Research on marital satisfaction consistently highlights financial transparency as a predictor of trust stability. It is not separate accounts that destroy marriages. It is hidden accounts. I told him, slowly, it's not the money. It's the secret. He looked down. I didn't want to worry you. That explanation is common too. Protection can become exclusion. When one partner decides what the other should or should not handle, equality weakens. At that moment, I felt two emotions fighting inside me. Hurt. And understanding. Hurt because I was not included. Understanding because I knew what it felt like to fear instability in a new country. We were immigrants building a life in the United States. We had responsibilities. Children. Bills. Dreams. Fear of losing everything can push people into silent decisions. But silence has consequences. I said one more sentence. Very clear. I need us to face fear together. That was the turning point. Not dramatic. Not loud. But honest. He did not defend himself aggressively. He did not accuse me. He admitted he had been anxious about money. About long-term stability. About being the primary provider. About not wanting to look weak. For the first time, I saw the hidden account not as betrayal alone, but as a symptom. A symptom of unspoken pressure. Still, understanding does not immediately heal pain. Trust, once cracked, does not repair overnight. But that night, something shifted. We moved from accusation to conversation. And conversation, even in imperfect English, is the only bridge back to ours. Silence at the dinner table. Silence can be louder than arguments. In the days after our conversation about the hidden account, our house in America looked normal from the outside. The lawn was trimmed. The trash bins went out on time. The children laughed in the living room. But at dinner, something invisible sat between us. We still said polite things. Can you pass the salt? How was work? The kids have homework. Functional English. Surface-level communication. But the emotional layer underneath was tense. When trust is shaken, the brain becomes hyper-alert. Psychologists call this hypervigilance. You start analyzing tone, facial expressions, pauses. If he checked his phone, I wondered who he was messaging. If he stayed quiet, I wondered what he was thinking. My nervous system stayed slightly activated, even during ordinary moments. And here is the connection to language learning. When your brain is in threat mode, comprehension decreases. I noticed that during those days, my listening practice felt harder again. I replayed sentences more often. I forgot new vocabulary quickly. Stress consumes cognitive resources. It is like too many apps running on your phone at once. Everything slows down. One evening at dinner, our daughter was telling a story from school. She spoke quickly, mixing excitement and details. Normally, I would ask her to slow down so I could catch every word in English. That night, I realized I had not heard half of what she said. My mind was somewhere else, replaying bank statements, replaying his hesitation. I forced myself to refocus. "Can you say that again, slowly?" I asked her. That small request grounded me. It reminded me that communication requires intention. If you feel distracted, ask for repetition. This is a practical English strategy and an emotional one. Meanwhile, my husband tried to act normal. He helped with dishes. He asked about my English class. But there was caution in his voice. As if he was walking on thin ice. Research on marital conflict shows that avoidance often increases tension. When couples avoid discussing a sensitive topic, physiological stress remains elevated. Heart rate increases slightly. Muscles stay tight. Even if no one is shouting, the body knows something is unresolved. I realized we were entering that danger zone, polite but distant. One night, after the children went to bed, we sat on opposite ends of the couch. The television was on, but neither of us was watching. The silence felt heavy. Instead of waiting for him to speak, I tried something different. "I don't want us to pretend," I said quietly. That sentence was simple. Present tense. Clear intention. He turned off the TV. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I feel distance," I replied. "And I don't like it." Naming emotion reduces its intensity. Studies in affect labeling show that when people put feelings into words, activity in the amygdala decreases. In simple language, when you say what you feel, the feeling becomes less overwhelming. "I feel hurt," I added. "But I also want to understand." This is important. Combining vulnerability with curiosity changes the tone of conflict. If you only accuse, the other person defends. If you only suppress, resentment grows. But if you say, "I feel hurt, and I want to understand," you create space for dialogue. He sighed. A long exhale. "I didn't realize it would affect you this much," he said. That sentence revealed something. Sometimes the person who hides something underestimates the emotional impact. For him, it was a safety plan. For me, it was exclusion. Cultural background shaped our reactions. In American society, individual autonomy is highly valued. Financial independence is often praised. In my upbringing, unity was praised. Neither value is wrong. But when unspoken, they collide. During that conversation, I practiced active listening, a skill taught in communication psychology. I repeated his words back to him. So you were afraid of instability. You wanted to feel secure. You didn't want to burden me. Repeating helps two things. First, it shows you are listening. Second, it improves your English comprehension. When you restate information, you process it more deeply. He nodded. Yes. I didn't want you to worry. But I worry more when I don't know, I said. There it was again. The difference in perception. Silence at the dinner table had been protecting us from discomfort. But it was also feeding misunderstanding. If you are learning English while going through emotional stress, here is something practical. Do not stop practicing. Instead, integrate your real emotions into your language exercises. Write sentences about your situation. Speak them aloud. This transforms passive learning into active processing. That week, my notebook filled with lines like, I value transparency. I want partnership. Security should be shared. Each sentence strengthened not only my vocabulary but my identity. The silence did not disappear immediately. Trust repairs slowly. But the quality of our conversations began to shift. Less avoidance. More honesty. Less politeness. More truth. And in that shift, I started to see something new. The hidden account was not the end of our marriage. It was an uncomfortable invitation to redefine what sharing really meant. Facing the truth together. Truth rarely arrives dramatically. It unfolds in layers. A few nights after our tense dinners and careful conversations, we decided to sit down properly, not casually on the couch, not in passing between chores, but intentionally at the kitchen table. No phones. No television. Just two chairs facing each other. In communication psychology, this is called a structured conversation. When couples create a defined time and space to talk, emotional regulation improves. The brain interprets predictability as safety. Safety allows honesty. I began with something simple. I don't want to fight, I said. I want to understand. Clear purpose. Calm tone. He nodded slowly. Okay. I asked the question again, but softer this time. When did you open the account? He told me the date. It was months ago, during a period when his company had announced possible layoffs. I remembered that time. He had seemed stressed. Quieter than usual. I had assumed it was normal work pressure. I was scared, he admitted. I didn't know if I would lose my job. Fear. Not betrayal. Fear. Research on financial stress in marriages shows that economic uncertainty often triggers protective behaviors. Some people respond by oversharing. Others respond by controlling resources quietly. Neither response is automatically malicious. They are coping strategies. But why not tell me? I asked. He hesitated, then answered honestly. Because I felt like I had to be strong. If I showed fear, I thought you would feel unsafe. That sentence shifted something inside me. In many cultures, especially within traditional expectations, men are conditioned to equate financial stability with worth. In the United States, the pressure to succeed economically can be intense. Job loss is not only financial, it can feel personal. I didn't want to look weak, he added. There it was. Not secrecy for independence. Secrecy for pride. I took a slow breath. When you hide things to protect me, I said carefully, it makes me feel excluded. Not protected. That distinction mattered. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Not shouting. Not blaming. Just unpacking layers. I practiced another English structure that is powerful in conflict resolution. When you underscore, I feel dot. When you opened the account without telling me, I felt unimportant. When you avoided the topic, I felt distant. This structure reduces accusation and increases clarity. It focuses on impact, not character. He listened. Really listened. Then he surprised me. I felt alone, he said. Alone. Inside our marriage. That word hit me deeply. While I was feeling excluded, he was feeling isolated in responsibility. We were both carrying fear separately, under the same roof. Psychologists call this parallel suffering, when partners struggle individually instead of collaboratively. The solution is not eliminating fear. It is sharing it. I asked gently, did you think I couldn't handle it? He shook his head. I thought I had to handle it. That sentence revealed a belief system. Not about me. About his role. Cultural narratives about masculinity often emphasize self-reliance. Financial preparedness. Emotional restraint. Those narratives can silently shape behavior. I married you to face life together, I said. Not to watch you carry it alone. Notice the language again. Together. Not control. Not accusation. Partnership. We discussed practical steps. Transparency. Access to all accounts. Regular financial reviews. Emergency savings, but jointly discussed and visible. Trust is rebuilt through consistent behavior, not dramatic apologies. Relationship research consistently shows that reliability over time restores safety more effectively than emotional intensity. Before ending the conversation, I said something that came from both my heart and my English practice. I I need honesty more than perfection. He nodded. And I need to learn to share fear, he replied. That night did not erase the pain, but it transformed it. The hidden account was no longer a secret in the dark. It was a problem placed on the table between us, visible, discussable. If you are listening to this as English practice, repeat these lines slowly. We can solve this. Let's be transparent. I want partnership. Short sentences. Strong meaning. Facing truth together requires humility. It requires language, even imperfect language. And it requires courage to admit, I was wrong, or I was afraid. When we stood up from that table, something subtle had changed. Not everything was fixed. But we were no longer divided by silence. We were, finally, on the same side of the problem. And that made all the difference. Cultural fears and old habits. Some fears do not begin in marriage. They begin in childhood. A few days after our long conversation at the kitchen table, we decided to talk again, not about the account itself, but about the story behind it. Because money decisions are rarely just numbers. They are history. We sat outside this time. Late afternoon. The American sky was wide and blue, the kind of sky that makes you feel small but hopeful at the same time. I want to understand where this fear comes from, I said. He looked thoughtful. Then he told me something he had never explained before. When he was young, his father lost a job suddenly. The family struggled quietly. Bills were paid late. Stress filled the house. No one talked openly about money, but everyone felt the tension. From that experience, he learned one silent lesson: always have a backup plan. Always prepare for collapse. That belief followed him into adulthood. Psychologists call this financial imprinting. Early experiences shape our money behaviors unconsciously. If your childhood included instability, you may grow up prioritizing control and hidden reserves. If your childhood emphasized communal sharing, you may grow up valuing transparency above all. Neither is wrong. But unspoken, they clash. I told him about my own upbringing. In my family, money was discussed openly at the dinner table. Not in detail, but in principle. If there was little, everyone adjusted. If there was abundance, everyone celebrated. Security meant unity. So for you, he said slowly, security means sharing everything. Yes, I answered. Even fear. That sentence stayed between us. Cultural context in the United States adds another layer. American society strongly promotes individual responsibility. Retirement accounts. Personal credit scores. Emergency funds. The language of finance here often centers on personal preparedness. Even married couples sometimes maintain separate savings as a form of independence. But independence without communication can feel like distance. Research in intercultural relationships shows that misunderstandings often arise not from conflict of values, but from difference in assumptions. We assume our partner defines safety the same way we do. When reality contradicts that assumption, we interpret it emotionally. That is what happened to us. The hidden account was not created out of a plan to leave. It was created out of an old habit of self-protection. A habit shaped long before I entered his life. Understanding this did not immediately remove my hurt, but it softened it. Compassion activates different neural pathways than anger. When we shift from accusation to curiosity, the brain reduces threat perception. Communication becomes easier. Even language processing improves because cognitive resources are no longer consumed by defensive thinking. During that conversation, I practiced another important English skill, reflective listening. So when layoffs were announced, you remembered your father losing his job. You felt pressure to protect us. You thought keeping money separate would reduce risk. He confirmed each sentence. Then he asked about my reaction. So when you saw the account, you felt excluded? Yes, I said. And unvalued. Naming emotions clearly creates emotional clarity. In practical terms, we began to design new rules together. Full access to all accounts. Monthly financial check-ins. Shared emergency planning. If fear appeared, it had to be spoken, not hidden. We even created a small ritual. On the first Sunday of every month, we would sit down with coffee and review finances together. Not obsessively. Just transparently. This ritual served two purposes: financial clarity and relational connection. Habits replace habits. You cannot remove an old coping strategy without creating a new one. For me, something else was changing too. My English was no longer only about grammar and vocabulary. It became the tool I used to express boundaries and empathy at the same time. I understand your fear, I said one evening. But I need visibility. Clear. Balanced. If you are learning English through this story, notice how powerful simple structures are. I understand, but I need. I respect, but I feel. I see your point, and I want. These connectors help avoid extreme thinking. They allow complexity. Cultural fears and old habits are strong. They do not disappear because of one conversation. But when brought into the open, they lose secrecy. That was the real transformation. The hidden account was no longer hidden. It became part of our shared narrative, not as a scandal, but as a lesson. And slowly, something unexpected began to grow again. Trust. Not blind trust. Informed trust. Rebuilding trust slowly. Trust does not return with one apology. It returns in small, almost boring actions repeated consistently. After we uncovered the fear behind the hidden account and agreed on new rules, life did not suddenly become dramatic or romantic. There were no movie-style speeches. No tears in the rain. Just spreadsheets. Coffee. Calendar reminders. Every first Sunday of the month, we sat at the kitchen table together. Laptops open. Bank accounts visible. Retirement funds reviewed. Credit card statements checked line by line. Transparency became routine. At first, I still felt a quiet tension in my chest during these meetings. My brain was scanning for inconsistency. This is normal after trust is shaken. Neuroscience explains that once a threat is detected, the brain creates a memory trace. It becomes more alert to similar signals in the future. Healing requires repeated experiences of safety to overwrite that alert pattern. So we created repeated safety. He would say, "Here is the savings account." He would turn the screen toward me. He would explain transfers before I asked. Predictability builds calm. Meanwhile, I continued practicing English, but differently now. Instead of random lessons, I used our real financial meetings as language practice. What is the interest rate? Can you clarify this charge? Should we increase our emergency fund? These were practical sentences. Real-life vocabulary. Financial English in context. Learning in context improves retention. Educational psychology shows that meaningful application strengthens neural connections more effectively than isolated memorization. When I used English to discuss our real money, my confidence increased faster than when I only watched passive videos. Rebuilding trust is similar to building fluency. Both require exposure, repetition, and patience. There were still moments of insecurity. One afternoon, he came home later than usual and did not answer his phone for 2 hours. My stomach tightened immediately. Old fear whispered, "Something is wrong." Instead of assuming, I applied what I had learned. When he walked in, I said calmly, "I felt anxious when I couldn't reach you." Not accusation. Not drama. Just emotion. He apologized. His phone battery had died. He understood why my reaction was stronger now. Instead of dismissing my fear, he acknowledged it. "I know trust takes time," he said. That sentence mattered more than any financial explanation. Relationship research consistently highlights one factor in long-term stability: responsiveness. When a partner responds to emotional needs with empathy, trust repairs faster. We also involved our children indirectly, not in details, but in modeling communication. If we disagreed, we discussed respectfully in front of them. We showed them that conflict does not equal collapse. Family stability in America often depends on emotional modeling. Children observe how parents handle stress. I wanted them to see collaboration, not secrecy. At the same time, my English continued to improve. I noticed something interesting. As my confidence in communication increased, my sense of equality in the marriage strengthened. Language and power are connected. When you can express yourself clearly, you feel less dependent. One evening, during our monthly review, I said, "I think we should adjust our budget for long-term savings." I did not hesitate. I did not soften my voice. I participated as an equal. He nodded and asked for my opinion. That was growth. Trust was no longer fragile glass. It was becoming reinforced material, tested, repaired, strengthened. We also created a shared digital folder where all financial documents were stored. Passwords were accessible to both of us. Transparency was no longer optional. It was structured. Practical systems support emotional goals. If you are watching this to practice English, here is a useful pattern. I appreciate your effort. I see the change. Thank you for being open. Gratitude reinforces positive behavior. Behavioral psychology shows that acknowledgement increases the likelihood of repetition. So I acknowledged. "I see that you're trying," I told him one night. He smiled, relieved. Rebuilding trust is not glamorous. It is quiet, repetitive, sometimes uncomfortable. But over time, consistency speaks louder than promises. Months passed. The hidden account remained open, but no longer hidden. It was converted into a joint emergency fund, fully visible, fully discussed. The secrecy was gone. The function remained. And something else changed inside me. I no longer saw English as just a survival tool in America. It had become the bridge that allowed me to defend my dignity, express vulnerability, and negotiate partnership. Trust returned slowly. Not because the problem disappeared, but because we faced it together. The day I stopped running from the truth. There was no dramatic music. No slammed doors. No perfect movie scene where everything suddenly makes sense. Just a quiet Saturday morning in our small apartment in the United States, sunlight falling across the kitchen table, and 2 cups of coffee growing cold between us. By section 10 of this journey, I had already cried enough. I had already doubted myself enough. I had already spent months improving my English slowly, sentence by sentence, just so I could finally speak without fear. And that morning, I knew something had to change. Not him. Not the past. Me. I used to believe that rebuilding trust in a marriage required grand gestures. Apologies. Promises. Maybe even therapy sessions. But what I learned through this painful chapter of my real-life story is that trust doesn't return because someone says sorry. It returns when honesty becomes stronger than fear. And fear had controlled me for too long. Fear of confrontation. Fear of saying the wrong words in English. Fear of confirming what I didn't want to know. When I first discovered the secret bank account, it felt like betrayal. But over time, I realized something deeper. The real damage came from silence. We had both been avoiding difficult conversations. We had both been protecting ourselves instead of protecting our marriage. That Saturday morning, I took a deep breath and spoke first. Not perfectly. Not fluently. But honestly. I don't want to fight, I said. I just want to understand. Those 7 words changed everything. For months, I had practiced English listening and speaking through late-night videos and slow reading exercises. I repeated phrases out loud while washing dishes. I recorded my voice and listened to my pronunciation. I studied common relationship vocabulary so I could explain emotions clearly. And in that moment, all that slow English learning finally had a purpose. He looked surprised. Maybe because my voice didn't shake this time. Maybe because I wasn't accusing him. I was inviting him. That's something I learned the hard way. When conversations begin with attack, they end in defense. But when they begin with vulnerability, they open doors. He explained that the bank account wasn't what I imagined. It wasn't about hiding money for another life. It was about fear too, his fear of financial instability, his fear of failing as a provider. Instead of communicating that anxiety, he handled it alone. Was it still wrong? Yes. Did it hurt? Absolutely. But it was no longer a mystery. And clarity is powerful. If you are watching this video because you feel emotionally exhausted in your relationship, I want you to hear this clearly. Confusion drains you more than truth. Even painful truth gives you something solid to stand on. That conversation lasted almost 3 hours. We talked about cultural differences, about expectations, about how growing up in different countries shaped the way we handle money, stress, and pride. For the first time in a long time, we weren't enemies. We were teammates trying to solve a problem. And here's something unexpected. Improving my English didn't just help me communicate. It helped me think differently. When you learn a new language, you learn new ways to express feelings. Sometimes your native language carries old wounds, old habits, old reactions. English gave me space to approach the same emotions with fresh structure. Instead of saying, "You betrayed me," I said, "I felt insecure and scared." That shift matters. Blame closes doors. Ownership opens them. Over the next few weeks, we created new rules together. Full financial transparency. Monthly check-ins. Honest updates about stress. Not because we suddenly became perfect, but because we chose intentional communication over comfortable silence. Rebuilding trust in marriage is not a one-time event. It's daily work. Some days feel hopeful. Some days feel heavy. But every day requires choice. And I had to make another important choice. Stop defining myself as the victim of this story. Yes, I was hurt. Yes, I felt lonely. Yes, I considered giving up. But I also grew stronger. I became more confident in speaking English. I became braver in expressing my needs. I stopped shrinking myself to avoid conflict. If you're learning English through real-life stories like mine, remember this: language is not just grammar and vocabulary. It is power. It is the ability to protect your heart with words instead of silence. Looking back now, I almost didn't record this video. I almost kept this chapter private because it felt embarrassing. But growth is rarely glamorous. Sometimes it looks like two tired people choosing to try again. And sometimes, the person who feels like quitting is the one who becomes the strongest. If you're in a season where you feel disappointed in your relationship, or discouraged in your English learning journey, don't underestimate small progress. The late-night practice sessions. The uncomfortable conversations. The tears no one sees. They are building something inside you. Section 10 is not the end of my story. It's the moment I stopped running from the truth and started running toward growth. Marriage is not about never making mistakes. It's about refusing to let fear write the ending. And if you're still here, still listening, still learning, that means you haven't given up either. Maybe that's your turning point too. When healing feels slower than the pain. After the big conversation in Section 10, I expected everything to feel lighter. I thought honesty would instantly fix the tension, like opening a window in a dark room. But real life is not that simple. Healing in a marriage does not move at the same speed as pain. Pain is fast. Healing is slow. And that difference almost broke me again. In the weeks that followed, we were more transparent. We shared passwords. We reviewed finances together. We scheduled weekly check-in conversations about stress and emotions. From the outside, it looked like progress. If someone had asked, "Are things better?" I would have said yes. But inside, I still carried fear. Every time his phone buzzed, my chest tightened. Every time he stayed quiet too long, my mind created stories. Trust, once cracked, doesn't magically reset. It rebuilds layer by layer. And during that rebuilding process, your thoughts can become your biggest enemy. This is something no one talks about enough in relationship advice videos. Even after the truth is revealed, your brain keeps replaying the old fear. Emotional recovery in marriage is not just about what your partner does, it's about how you retrain your own thinking. I realized I needed to work on myself, not just fix us. So I went back to something that had quietly transformed me before, slow English learning through storytelling. Late at night, after we finished our conversations, I would sit with my notebook and write down sentences about what I felt. I feel anxious when I don't have clarity. I need reassurance, not silence. I am learning to separate facts from fear. Writing in English forced me to slow down my emotions. When I wrote in my native language, the feelings came out like a storm. But in English, I had to search for vocabulary. That pause between feeling and expression gave me control. And control is powerful when you're rebuilding trust. One evening, about a month after our big talk, I noticed something different. He came home from work, put his phone on the table, and said, "Today was stressful. I was worried about money again." No hiding. No secretive behavior. Just honesty. It was a small moment, but it meant everything. Instead of reacting with suspicion, I practiced what I had learned. I listened fully. I asked calm questions. I repeated what he said to make sure I understood. Active listening, a skill I learned while improving my English speaking, became a relationship tool. Healthy communication in marriage is not about perfect words. It's about intentional listening. That night, we didn't argue. We planned. We discussed savings goals. We talked about financial anxiety openly. For the first time, I felt like we were facing challenges as partners instead of opponents. Still, there were setbacks. One day, I checked the bank app and saw a transfer I didn't recognize. My heart raced. Old fear returned instantly. I wanted to confront him aggressively. I wanted to assume the worst. But I paused. Pause is a powerful discipline. I took a deep breath and said, "Can you explain this transfer? I feel nervous when I don't understand." The answer was simple. It was a payment for a shared bill we had discussed earlier. I had forgotten. That moment taught me something important. Not every trigger means danger. Sometimes trauma from past hurt makes neutral situations feel threatening. If you are rebuilding trust after betrayal, understand this. Your nervous system needs time to calm down. You are not crazy for feeling sensitive. You are healing. And healing requires patience, with your partner and with yourself. I also had to confront another truth. Part of my identity had been tied to being the strong one. The independent one. The one who sacrifices quietly. But strength without vulnerability creates distance. So I started expressing softer emotions. I'm still scared sometimes. I need extra reassurance right now. I'm trying, but it's hard. Saying those words in English felt empowering. Not because they were grammatically perfect, but because they were honest. Emotional intimacy grows when both people feel safe admitting weakness. Over time, our weekly conversations became less formal and more natural. Transparency stopped feeling like a rule and started feeling like a habit. The secret bank account, once the symbol of betrayal, became just a lesson, a painful but transformative one. And something unexpected happened. I stopped checking his phone. Not because I didn't care, but because I wasn't living in constant fear anymore. That shift didn't happen overnight. It happened through dozens of small, consistent choices. Through difficult conversations. Through self-reflection. Through slow English practice that strengthened my confidence. If you're watching this because you're emotionally exhausted in your marriage, or you feel like giving up on love, hear this: progress is rarely dramatic. Most of the time, it's quiet. It's choosing to ask instead of accuse. It's choosing to listen instead of assume. It's choosing growth instead of pride. Section 11 is not about a perfect ending. It's about sustainable change. It's about understanding that rebuilding trust in a relationship is both a shared responsibility and a personal journey. You cannot control another person's actions, but you can control your communication. You can control your mindset. You can control whether fear or courage speaks first. Looking back, I realized the biggest transformation was not in our bank account or even in our transparency rules. It was in me. I am no longer afraid of difficult conversations. I no longer stay silent to keep peace. I no longer believe that struggling means failing. Marriage is not the absence of problems. It is the willingness to solve them together. And healing, real healing, is not fast. But it is possible. The version of me who almost gave up. There was a version of me, not long ago, who stood in the kitchen one night and quietly thought, maybe it would be easier to walk away. Not because I stopped loving him. Not because the problem was impossible. But because I was tired. Tired of overthinking. Tired of emotional tension. Tired of feeling like I was the only one trying to hold everything together. If you've ever felt emotionally exhausted in your marriage, you understand this kind of fatigue. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's heavy and silent. And sometimes, it convinces you that giving up would hurt less than staying. Section 12 is about that version of me, the one who almost quit, and the decision that changed everything. After months of rebuilding trust, improving communication, and slowly regaining emotional stability, I expected confidence to stay consistent. But healing is not a straight line. Some days you feel strong. Other days, old doubts whisper again. One evening, after a small disagreement about finances, I felt that old wave of discouragement. The argument wasn't even serious. It was about budgeting priorities. But my mind exaggerated it. Nothing has changed. We're going in circles. This is too hard. Negative thoughts are powerful storytellers. They create endings that haven't happened yet. Instead of reacting immediately, I did something different. I went for a walk alone. No phone. No music. Just space to think. Personal growth often begins in quiet reflection, not loud confrontation. As I walked, I asked myself one honest question. Am I tired of him, or am I tired of the process? The answer surprised me. I wasn't tired of the relationship. I was tired of growth. Growth is uncomfortable. It requires self-awareness. It demands accountability. It forces you to confront your own triggers, fears, and habits. Rebuilding trust in marriage isn't just about forgiving someone else. It's about becoming emotionally stronger yourself. And emotional strength requires energy. When you're learning healthy communication, practicing vulnerability, and improving your English at the same time, it can feel overwhelming. Some nights, I wanted to stop recording my voice for pronunciation practice. I wanted to stop journaling my feelings in English. I wanted to stop initiating difficult conversations. But I realized something important. The version of me who wanted to quit was also the version of me who feared failure the most. Fear disguises itself as exhaustion. When I got home from that walk, I didn't start another debate. Instead, I said something simple and honest. I'm not giving up. I'm just tired. Can we rest without quitting? That sentence changed the energy in the room. Sometimes relationships don't need dramatic solutions. They need shared understanding. Emotional intimacy grows when both people admit they are human. We sat down and talked, not about money, not about mistakes, but about pressure. We discussed how rebuilding trust had been stressful for both of us. We acknowledged that progress can feel heavy before it feels natural. And for the first time, I saw something clearly. He was trying to. Maybe not perfectly. Maybe not in the exact way I expected. But consistently. One of the biggest mindset shifts in long-term relationships is this. Progress does not always look the way you imagine it. Sometimes change is subtle. Sometimes it's quiet responsibility instead of loud promises. Over the next few weeks, I made a conscious decision to shift my focus. Instead of searching for signs of failure, I started noticing signs of effort. He updated me without being asked. He invited financial discussions. He asked how I was feeling emotionally, not just practically. And I did the same. I stopped testing him in my mind. I stopped assuming the worst. I started responding to the present instead of reacting to the past. If you are struggling in your marriage right now, especially after betrayal or broken trust, understand this. Wanting to quit does not mean you are weak. It means you are overwhelmed. There is a difference. The key question is not, do I feel tired? The key question is there still willingness on both sides? Because willingness is the foundation of rebuilding trust. Through this entire journey, improving my English played a deeper role than I expected. It gave me tools to express complex emotions clearly. It allowed me to consume relationship advice from different perspectives. It helped me slow down reactive thoughts and structure them into calm communication. Language learning became personal development. Instead of saying, "You never change," I learned to say, "I feel discouraged when progress feels slow." That shift prevented many unnecessary arguments. By the time we reached this stage, I no longer saw our marriage as something fragile. I saw it as something under construction. Construction is messy. It's noisy. It looks chaotic before it looks beautiful. But quitting in the middle guarantees nothing gets built. Section 12 is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing commitment even when motivation fades. It's about recognizing that emotional growth feels exhausting because you are building new habits. And new habits require repetition. There will always be moments when walking away seems easier. That thought may appear suddenly, in the kitchen, in the car, during a small disagreement. But decisions made at your lowest emotional point rarely reflect your deepest values. That night in the kitchen, the version of me who almost gave up didn't disappear. She evolved. She became someone who understands that rest is not surrender. That fatigue is not failure. That love, when combined with accountability and communication, can survive difficult seasons. If you're still watching this story, maybe you're standing at your own crossroads. Maybe you feel discouraged. Maybe you're learning English while trying to rebuild your confidence and your relationship at the same time. Let me tell you this clearly. Growth feels hardest right before it becomes natural. Don't confuse temporary exhaustion with permanent incompatibility. Sometimes, the strongest decision is not leaving. It's staying, with boundaries, with honesty, and with the courage to keep building. If you've watched until this moment, then you already know. This story was never just about a secret bank account, or even about rebuilding trust in marriage. It was about identity. It was about emotional growth. It was about finding my voice in a foreign language when I felt like losing myself. The truth is, the hardest part was not the betrayal. The hardest part was facing the version of me who stayed silent for too long. And maybe that's why you're here. Maybe you're not just learning English through real-life stories. Maybe you're trying to rebuild confidence. Maybe you're emotionally exhausted in your relationship. Maybe you're standing at the edge of giving up, on love, on growth, or even on yourself. But here's what this journey taught me. Rebuilding trust in marriage starts with rebuilding trust in yourself. Fluent English doesn't begin with perfect grammar, it begins with courage. And healing doesn't arrive suddenly, it grows quietly through consistent effort. This channel is not about perfect relationships. It's not about flawless English pronunciation. It's about transformation. Through slow English listening practice, real emotional storytelling, and honest conversations about love, culture, and personal growth, we are building something deeper than language skills. We are building confidence. And this is only one chapter. In the next videos, I will share what happened when an unexpected message appeared months later, a moment that tested everything we rebuilt. I will also show you the exact English phrases I used during difficult conversations, so you can practice speaking confidently in your own life. Because your story matters too. If this video touched you, even a little, don't stay silent like I once did. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter of this real-life marriage journey and slow English learning series. Like this video to support more authentic relationship stories in English. And in the comments, tell me. What is one conversation you are afraid to have? Your courage might inspire someone else. Remember, you are not weak for struggling. You are not foolish for loving deeply. And you are never too late to grow. This wasn't the end. It was the moment everything truly began. I'll see you in the next story.